Athletic Director, KH&A, Instructor, Temporary, Social Science Counselor, Temporary, EOP&S Director, EOP&S and Foster Youth Director, Basic Needs, DSP&S, Custodial Supervisor, Acting, Facilities and Construction Services Coordinator, Acting, TLC, Title V Program. Government Code 54957.6, Conference with Labor Negotiators, Agency Designated Representative, Robert S. Belinsky, Assistant Superintendent, Vice President, Human Services. Appeal by Wayne W. Van Ellis to Pasadena Area Community College District Board of Trustees regarding administrative determination on his EEO complaint. Government Code 54956.9b, Conference with Legal Counsel regarding anticipated litigation, one matter. Government Code 54956.9a, Conference with Legal Counsel regarding existing litigation, name of case, Noah Corral versus Pasadena Area Community College District, Keenan claim number 603739. Government Code 54957, Employee Discipline, Dismissal, Release to Employees. And finally, Government Code 54957, Evaluation of Employees, Superintendent President. Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We're going to reconvene our regular meeting. Report of action in closed session. I have 3 to report out on. In closed session, the board discussed a settlement agreement with a former employee and received an update and gave direction, but no action was taken. In closed session, the board approved the release of 2 probationary employees. The votes were 6 yeses and 1 absent. The board has received an appeal from an administrative determination following investigation of alleged unlawful harassment, discrimination, and has reviewed the complaint and subsequent investigation. In closed session, the board accepted the administrative determination and rejected the appeal. The votes were 6 yeses and 1 absent. Roll call.
Trustee Chen Lao.
Here.
Trustee Gibson.
Here.
Trustee Kwong.
Here.
Trustee Martin. Trustee Osterling.
Here.
Trustee Silver.
Here.
Trustee Wong.
Here.
Student Trustee Gomez.
Present.
Land acknowledgement. I'd like to have student trustee, please, to take us on.
Pasadena City College is a learning community within the indigenous homelands of people who have been known as the Gabrieleño Band of Mission Indians of the Xixiquanga Village and Quiche Nation. Tonight we acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this land on which we gather. We also honor the legacy of the African diaspora and recognize that the United States, as we know it, was built at the often fatal expense of forcefully enslaved Black people. We are indebted to their labor and the labor of many Black and brown bodies that continue to work in the shadows of our collective benefit. PCC and its faculty, staff, and students recognize that we're all simultaneously teachers, learners, and guests on these lands. An acknowledgement is a small part of an ongoing process of working to raise awareness about histories that are too often erased or forgotten, to recognize our place in this history, and to affirm our commitment to social justice, systemic change, and anti-racism. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Dr. Gina Lopez is here today, and I'd like to have her lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Everyone please stand. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we have the resolution number 736, authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the Board of Trustees, its regular committees, and any other college bodies as required by the Ralph M. Brown Act.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One absent.
1 absent. Okay. Now we have approval, reordering of agenda items.
Motion to approve without change.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
1 absent. Introductions and recognitions. Are there any? Okay, there are no introductions and recognitions today. Public comment on non-agenda items.
We do have a number of public comments. Is Ms. Shaganaka present? Ms. Shaganaka? Okay. Mr. Morales? Thank you. You have 3 minutes, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. In the spring of 2022, Pasadena City College robbed me of several $100s. In the spring of 22, Pasadena City College delayed my goal attainment by at least 16 weeks to almost a year. In the spring of 2022, Pasadena City College stole from me my most valuable asset, my time. But it didn't have to be this way. This negative consequence could have been avoided. Pasadena City College failed to properly communicate and schedule of classes. I've tried since spring of 22 for clearer communication. Although positive steps have been taken, mostly as a result of my concern, there is much more to be desired. I'm asking the board to look into properly communicating when a third-party proctoring software is required for a class at Pasadena City College. Currently, the schedule of classes indicates proctoring software may be used. Click CRN for details. Clicking CRN for details doesn't provide any details. It only states this section may be using a proctoring software that requires specific computer technology. Please contact the instructor for information about plan usage and technology requirements. I've been told Proctorio is the only proctoring software in the math department. If this is the case, why is the wording so ambiguous about what software is being used? Why do students have to work to find out what third-party program is being used? Why do instructors have to add to their workload to answer a question that should be answered when we click the CRN for more details? Nowhere in Pasadena City College's website indicates that using this software is safe. I believe, as the University of Illinois Urban-Champaign indicated, that Proctorio should be discontinued because of concerns with accessibility, privacy, and data security. I hope that the board could look at, for the following schedule, to simply state if there's going to be a proctoring software used in any class. I'm retaking a class because of that, and I only found out about it halfway through the course. I shouldn't have to be here to explain to educational professionals that communicating clearly to students is in the best interest of everyone here. Does anyone have any questions? Any board member?
Thank you, but your time has expired.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Rebecca Cobb.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Dr. Rebecca Cobb. I'm the Dean of Student Life here at Pasadena City College, as well as a resident and homeowner in Altadena, California. Academia is often thought of as an ivory tower, a place where the brightest and most persistent minds convene to acquire more knowledge and expertise. Higher education is purported to be the beacon of free thought, yet many institutions have not yet grappled with a critical part of every structure and system in America: anti-blackness. Anti-blackness is the inability to recognize black humanity. It is the act of devaluing blackness while systematically marginalizing black people, the issues that affect us, and the institutions created to support us. The first form of anti-blackness is overt racism, which is upheld by covert structural and systemic racism that categorically predetermines the socioeconomic status of blacks in this country. The second form of anti-blackness is unethical disregard for black people, as seen in cases of police or civilian brutality against black bodies. In short, the suppression of racial prejudice of black people has directly resulted in the construction of a systemic racism, whereby policies have been deliberately designed to oppress black people while centering and upholding whiteness. These policies were and are anti-black. And while they certainly negatively impact all communities of color, the people who are most harmed by these policies were and are black. Institutions of higher education continue a legacy of anti-blackness through systematic racialized socialization in education. And if we're going to truly rectify environments that were built off of and thrive on the very existence of black bodies and black labor, then we have to understand and be held accountable for the ways in which it shows up. It shows up as anti-darkness or colorism, as racial disparities in our healthcare systems, or in the manifestation of school-to-prison pipelines and the criminalization of black youth. It shows up in the systemic displacement, exclusion, and segregation of black communities. It shows up in higher education institutions that reinforce intergenerational reproduction of white privilege. And finally, it shows up in the hypervigilance and hyper-surveillance of black-centered event programming, focused on serving a community not only underrepresented here at PCC, but underserved. It is for this reason that we call attention to the unprecedented scrutiny of the forthcoming PCC's Black Family Reunion on October 1st. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next speaker is Paul Price.
Good evening, Board. My name is Dr. Price. I teach in the social sciences area. We must hold ourselves accountable for the ways in which anti-blackness appears on our campus, that is, in classrooms, in social clubs, and of course, on the school board. It shows up in black bodies being policed, controlled, regulated, questioned, feared, portrayed as dishonest, untrustworthy, and unwilling to conform to societal norms. Anti-blackness was exemplified during the last two board meetings with hostile scrutiny of the upcoming Black Family Reunion. During the August board meeting, Todd Jones' public commentary insinuated that a black, female-owned business with a history of 10 years or more experience was an illegitimate company. Why? Because Todd failed to locate them on the internet using Google. I am proficient in using Google, and in doing so, I found that Todd endorsed Trustee Gibson during the campaign for his election. These kinds of interactions are characterized by gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation that creates doubt in victims of racist aggression, and making them question their very own memory and sanity, which only perpetuates systemic racism. This tactic is designed to invalidate someone's experience, and several examples exist. For example, someone may comment, someone may say, "I'm sure he didn't mean anything by that. That's just his way." Or they may say, "You might be blowing this out of proportion." Further, they may say, "You'll have to learn to be less sensitive." And finally, they may say, "You can't take a joke." If you hear these statements, or maybe you're thinking them to yourself right now, we should instead shift our thinking to an affirmative response as follows. As an organization with a commitment of equity and inclusion, we should take our colleagues' concerns seriously. We should deal with this immediately rather than wait for a more convenient time. There is no more convenient time than now. As America undergoes a long overdue awakening of systemic racism, we must recognize, confront, and deal with the crippling impact of anti-racism at PCC. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Oron Nawineri.
Hello, my name is Orane Waneri, but you tried. I'm here in my capacity as the Vice President of the Association of Black Employees, also known as TABE. Trustee Gibson, we appreciate your interest in the Black Family Reunion event, but you have gone about this in a manner which is detrimental and harmful to Black employees on this campus. On April 30th, 2022, on your campaign's Facebook page, you posted a PBS video of Consummate River College President Dr. Edward Bush's successful work with Black community college men. You captioned this video with the following, and I quote, "We need to reach out to increase Black enrollment at PCC. This is literally the objective of the PCC Black Family Reunion." You campaigned on a platform of community building and expanding diversity, won, and then immediately used your new position of power to undermine the work and integrity of Black PCC employees while we are working to increase Black enrollment and positively impacting the reputation of PCC in the local community. As Black faculty and staff at Pasadena City College, we refuse to be used as collateral damage in your attack against the superintendent president and demand that you cease using this program as a political pawn immediately. The claims that you are wanting transparency, whether that is related to the cost or the contract details of the Black Family Reunion, is extremely problematic. For public context, you and the other board members in July approved a business consent agenda that exceeded $2.5 million. Further, in August, the trustees approved another $4.6 million without one question, not one question. So the call for transparency certainly cannot be related to the dollar amount of $155,000 or your interest. You simply could have reached out to the committee members as was suggested by Dr. Andrew Jonas. As of today's date, you have yet to take us up on that offer. I am perplexed by your need to see the contract when you have not taken one step to reach out to the Planning Committee or the Association of Black Employees.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ibrahim Naim.
My comments are directed to Trustee Chen Lo. Your lack of support of the Black community was demonstrated with your complete disregard of the advice of Dr. Andrew Jonas to consider an alternative date for the board retreat. 3 dates were discussed in the August board meeting as potential dates for the board retreat: September 24th, October 1st, and October 15th. You made it clear to your colleagues and the public that you preferred October 1st, despite knowing that the largest event for Black and African American students, student recruitment and outreach was on that day. I wonder if you considered how your insistence that the board retreat occur on October 1st impacted the Black employees who were spending many volunteer hours organizing the event. I wonder if you considered how that decision would make us feel. We did notice that on tonight's board agenda that the board retreat is indeed scheduled for October 1st. Trustee Chen Lo, had you taken a moment, listened, and then thought about the implications, perhaps you could have avoided causing additional harm. Despite any harm you have caused, intentional or otherwise, we request allyship. Allyship is a strategic mechanism used by individuals to become collaborators, accomplices, and co-conspirators who fight injustice and promote equity through supportive personal relationships and public acts of sponsorship and advocacy. Just last month, the Executive Director of Student Equity shared data reporting on the growing educational gaps for Black and African American students. That knowledge should be taken into every space in which you participate. Knowing that this event is paramount in not only recruiting Black and African American students, but also reconciling PCC with the surrounding Black community it has largely ignored, we ask that you be more conscious of your actions going forward. Those actions are not lost on or overlooked by those who remain on the fringes of society and are systematically targeted by institutions that are supposed to be targeted by institutions that are supposed to grant them protection and access. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Marilyn Johnson.
Good evening. I represent the classified staff this evening. The board's role and accountability. The board has moved away from the role of fiscal agent and instead is using their power in ways that are detrimental and harmful to Black employees on campus. Per the Community College League of California, also known as the CCLC, trustees should require periodic reports to monitor fiscal control and policies of accounting processes, require regular reports on the fiscal status of the institution, become educated about the fiscal statements of their implications, define board expectations for independent audits of district accounts and business procedures, set criteria for auditing firm to conduct annual audits, review the annual audit report, discuss deviations, if any, and give appropriate direction to the CEO. As you can see, the task of reviewing an individual contact details is not listed. We do respect the need to hold the college administration and staff accountable. As you desire to hold the superintendent accountable, we desire the same of you, your accountability. We recommend that the new trustees and Trustee Chin Lau enroll in the Excellence in Trusteeship program hosted by the CCLC. Per the website, it is the single best overview of responsibilities required for board members of the California Community College. State leaders and experienced trustees provide comprehensive overviews of the knowledge and skills necessary to become effective trustees. Education is key. We expect competent, well-trained trustees who place the institution's needs, student, staff, and faculty at the center of decision-making framework, not your own personal needs or personal agendas. Many in our communities live in your districts, voted to have those seats. We expect you to value and respect the work of the college staff by supporting our work while not making our work hyper-visible to external constituents who have personal agendas. Please work with us, not against us. We welcome the 5 trustees. Authentic allyship requires great humility and deep reflection. An ally takes time to read, listen, watch, and deepen their understanding first. Please listen to what is being said and think carefully about why the only event for Black recruitment has been raised to the level of scrutiny. Being an ally requires advantages, opportunities, resources, and the power you automatically are afforded in the minority group while others have overly been or subtly denied. Receive our comments as a gift. Even if you are surprised this evening or dismayed by what we have shared, show that you value candor. It takes courage for us to be here. Listen generously, try to empathize with us and validate our experiences and how we felt by the level of scrutiny our event has received. Vigilantly monitor the board's meetings and other workspaces for racist or sexist comments and behavior. Then be clear and decisive in shutting them down. Don't wait for marginalized people to react, as they often are accused of playing the race card, a tactic used to silence people of color specifically. When you witness anti-blackness, don't approach us later behind the scenes to offer sympathy. Give us your support at that moment. Trustee Martin, Trustee Silver, Trustee Osterlin, we thank you for your ongoing support and allyship and can't wait for you to host you at the Black Family Reunion on October 1st. Trustee Kwong, Trustee Wang, we welcome you to the PCC family and we cannot wait to wrap you in love, laughter, and care of the Black Family Reunion being.
Thank you for your comment. The next speaker is Katina Williams. Three minutes, begin whenever.
My name is Katina Williams. I stand before you today as the president of the Association of Black Employees, also known as TABE. The Association of Black Employees is active, and in addition to our regular educational and social events, we meet monthly. Feel free to attend any of our meetings and come and thank and say hello to the hardworking, amazing, brilliant Black hourly, classified, full-time and part-time faculty and administrators that make up TABE's membership. We ask that the board plan to take on the work of becoming anti-racist collectively. As the college's governing body and as individuals by engaging in the following. 1, participate in anti-racist education and training and establish key measures to track the board's progress in becoming anti-racist. 2, seek out, listen to, and reflect upon the accounts of racism and trauma, past and present, in order to better understand the culture. Address your role in shaping it and help the college build a community where everyone can reach their full potential. 3, create a new trustee orientation process informed by anti-racist values, standards, and education. And this is just the beginning. The journey towards racial reconciliation cannot be achieved without civil discourse and difficult conversations. Our hope is that you reflect on the sentiments shared this evening and join us in solidarity on October 1st. In closing, we leave you with a quote from renowned author and activist, Dr. Ibrahim Kendi, who argues, "To be anti-racist is a radical choice in the face of this history, requiring a radical reorientation of our consciousness. And that being an anti-racist requires persistent self-awareness, constant self-criticism, and regular self-examination." Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Our final speaker. Thank you. Our final speaker will be Ms. Shaganaka.
Good morning. One more thing, Madam Secretary or whoever is in charge of the timer. When I speak, you shut me down in 3 minutes. And then somehow when they speak, it seems like the timer doesn't really make any sense to you. So I don't understand why is that. So, okay, I'm ready to start. Good morning. So last board meeting, one of the students received an email response from one of the board members. And then that gave me a lot of inspiration regarding this new topic. So during the pandemic, and then sometimes I reach out to my professors. There are two kinds of professors. One is called a part-time professor, one is called a full-time professor. Sometimes when I reach out to my part-time professors, either I don't get an email response, either I got an email after 3 or 4 weeks. During their Zoom meeting, I called them out. I said, "Hey, professor," at the end of the class, during the Zoom, I said, "Hey, professor, why do you ignore email communications?" And then the professor said, hey, I work part-time. I teach at 3 colleges, okay? I have like 500, 600 students. I cannot just, answering your emails all day long. Literally, I sent her 2 emails, literally. We already know the question, the Zoom meeting doesn't go well. I was removed from the meeting just by asking that question. And then the second kind of professor is called a full-time professor. And then sometimes I reach out to them, and asking for support, asking for clarification, asking for one-on-one online office hour, asking for communication, and again, either no email response, either 3-4 weeks email response. During their Zoom meeting, I called them out. I said, hey, professor, why do you ignore email communication? They said, hey, I teach 7 classes at PCC. I have 500 students. I cannot just respond to your emails all day long. I literally sent her 1 email. So I just want to ask the board that from what time that one trustee members, answering the student's email becomes such a great, commendation, becomes the outstanding trustee of the year. From what time that not all, some of them, professor I experienced, ignoring students' email become entitled, become legitimate, become reasonable. And then from what time that PCC that, having a culture of ignoring emails, ignoring email communications, ignoring professionalism in workplaces. I never respond to the professors via Zoom, but I want to respond to them via this Zoom meeting. If you teach at 3 different colleges, and if you are not able to assist every single of your student, that means you cannot teach at 3 different colleges. For the full-time professor, if you have 7 classes, and if you continue to ignoring the emails, that means you do not have enough energy and time to teach 7 classes. I'm sorry. Do I still have time or expire?
No, that time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all the public comments we have.
Thank you. Thank you for the public comments. Approval of minutes for special meeting, number 2, August 5th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 1 absent. Board committees. Approval of minutes for regular business meeting number 3, August 10th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 1 absent. Board committee reporting out. There are none. I know we have the budget committee that's going to make the budget presentation fairly soon. Combined consent calendar, students, instruction, and business.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 1 absent. Consent calendar students, approval personnel consent calendar, and this is all trustees except the student trustee.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 1 absent. Okay. Action items recommended for approval. Public hearing of proposed budget and fund allocations.
Move to approve?
We don't have any comment.
I'm opening the public hearing of the proposed 2022-23 budget and fund allocations. And then we have a proposed adopted budget presentation.
Good evening, trustees. All right, so we've got lots of information to share this evening about our proposed adopted budget for 2022-23. Just for a little bit of clarity about the state budget framework. So the 2022-23 budget for community colleges provides about $4 billion in Prop 98 augmentations over the prior year, which is really great. $1.9 billion are provided as ongoing resources, whereas $2.1 billion spread across the system is in one-time funding. The enacted budget also includes a little over $1 billion in ongoing adjustments to the student-centered funding formula, so the base allocation calculations have changed and been updated. There's also ongoing spending that includes $200 million that has been designated for part-time faculty health benefits insurance, an additional $26.7 million to sustain system-wide enrollment growth of 0.5%. This is sort of just a visual of those pieces related to the top chart is related to our ongoing investments to the system. The COLAs, the SCIF base increase of about $600 million, again, part-time faculty benefits, success grant completion grants, as well as enrollment in other categories. And when we say ongoing, that means that the system has committed to giving those funds year after year. The one-time investments, which we're really actually happy about, and it's happened the last 2 years, the 2 fiscal years, is a pretty large investment in our deferred maintenance. And so for many years, many districts across California never received any or very minimal deferred maintenance fees, but these last 2 years, there's been some significant contributions there. There's a new district block grant related to COVID, and so the institution, Dr. Ramirez, helped to submit our case for asking for the COVID block grant dollars, and so we appreciate her support. There's additional funding on retention and enrollment in terms of getting students back to college, common course numbering, and a host of other categories. So again, ongoing funds and then one-time funds. This is all really wonderful, and so we've been really thankful for, as the state revenues and projections have increased and there have been additional surplus, that those investments have gone into education. But the Legislative Analyst's Office, I always want to caution and just make sure that we're presenting a holistic picture. So while 2022-23 and 2023-24 are years in which the state feels confident that there will be some level of surplus, there is a budget deficit predicted by 25-26. And so it really requires us to be prudent and thoughtful about the financial decisions that we make for the district. Because while we are certainly wanting to make great decisions about how we invest some of these additional one-time funds today, our responsibility is to make sure that we are playing the long game for the institution, not just the first 2 years or 3 years, but really 5-10 years in terms of projection. So the future trends in state tax revenues, while they may still receive it, we have some concern about the GAN limit, which we'll talk a little bit about what that is. It's a really old 1970s legislation that it limits the amount that the state can pay or use on particular funding sources. And if it exceeds the GAN limit, then the state is obligated to pay back. Either they can make a contribution into education, or they have to actually give the money back to taxpayers. And so you may see it, right, sometimes on water bills and things. You get these nice little credits and you're like, what is that? Yay, we got money. So that's the state sort of meeting its obligation and returning those funds. But there definitely is some strategic thought in terms of how we want to move forward in these future fiscal years that we need to take into consideration as we plan not only this year's adopted budget, but as we go into next year and the year after. All right, so this is a really sort of easy, so we're going to be approving or asking for your approval for the 311 report, which is just our annual closing of our books to the state. And so this is really a summary of those pieces. And so the question always I receive or Jesse receives would be like, how did we close our books? How did we end this last fiscal year? And so this is a way to easily describe that to you all without having to go through the 50-page 311 report. So last year, so when we closed the books in June, the total revenue that the college received was about $191 million, and then we expended about $183 million. So we had an additional $8 million to help to contribute to our reserves. And so you'll see our reserve balance is listed there. One of the interesting pieces that we are watching and monitoring the state for is where they're making their contributions. And so the state has made some strategic decisions about making sure that they are making some investments in what's called the Rainy Day Fund, which is the budget stabilization account. And so as they are making and sort of making sure that they're solvent in, year 3, year 4, we are also prudently, when we can contribute to our reserves, we do so. And so that's our reserve balance as of the end of the fiscal year, so June 30 of 2022. So that's how we ended this last fiscal year. Let's chat really quickly about just a summary of how we're sort of the projected for the 2022-23 adopted budget summary. We'll see that our state apportionment numbers is about $174 million, so 86% of the unrestricted general budget comes in on state apportionment. Lottery is about $2.4 million. It's actually down from last year. So lottery is actually calculated based on our enrollment, our P2 enrollment. And so as our enrollment dips, our lottery fund calculation also goes down. And so we see about a $2 million swing down from last year's adopted budget to this year's. Our state mandated claims are pretty stable. We've also reduced our non-resident tuition, which has an implication on our international student population. And so that is down about $1 million that we again project based on some loss in enrollment there. We always have this CalSTRS on behalf payment. So that actually is just a pass-through payment to CalSTRS on our behalf. So we don't actually receive those funds. They just bypass us and they get to the place where they need to be. Some increase on our categorical and student fees. And we also then are thoughtful about our lost revenue recovery for CARES, the indirect costs of that. So we're able to go against those funds and retrieve those for the district. If you then so if you say this $202 million, if you look at then the anticipated expenses, salary and benefits actually calculates the largest investment that the college has made. And so our largest investment is actually in people. And so it's very important that, as we're thinking through, again, the adopted budgets and decisions that have to be made, most of our investment is in people. And so we're very thoughtful and protective of that. Supplies and materials, you have $1.4 million, another $21 million in operating expenses and services. What rolls into that category, just simply, it tends to be, think about all the contracts that the district has, utilities, the lights in this room, the water that you get to wash your hands with, all of those get paid under these operating expenses and services. We do some small capital outlay pieces in the general unrestricted fund, and then other outgoing transfers, which help to fund some other pieces like our police, public safety pieces. There's some contributions there, our tech refresh, and items there. So that constitutes this sort of revenue, what we expect to receive, and then how we expect to spend those funds in the next fiscal year. This is a really busy chart, so forgive me. It gives you sort of like a really quick rundown of our general fund, of all of the different funds that the district manages. So whether it be the general fund, our restricted general fund, capital outlay, our OPEB, self-insurance, internal. So there's a ton of accounts and funds that the district is managing, and so it gives you sort of like the net activity in terms of transfers. I'm going to pause. I have another slide about that, so we'll call that to specifically in just a moment. I always like, so when I'm sort of working through the budget with Jessie and her team, I like to sort of, hey, what's different? I want to see what happened last year as compared to what happened this year. And so I always want to make sure that we're transparent and thoughtful about expressing that in this meeting in particular. And so some of those pieces are, we had, so I have an unanticipated income column and then where our expenses have been down based on COVID-19. So there's a federal line, 8199. So if you're looking at the full board report, which is that big document that you don't necessarily have to go through at this moment, but there is a drawdown of $1.9 million in CARES costs on that line as well. So as the district is expending funds, we can then come back and expend those or draw down the funds to reimburse the district. There's an educational revenue augmentation. So the revenue on line 8817 specifically was down. The calculated estimates are about $3 million down. The unrealized gain loss in cash in, so line 8861. So this is a negative number, and it's the first time we've actually had to report this on the actual, in recent years, certainly since I've been there. And what it does is it basically values our cash in the bank based on fair market value. So as the market dips, as we've seen, then our calculations dip as well, or the value of the cash in bank dips. And so this is the first time. So when we have really great stock market years and years where the market is really strong, you'll see that be a positive number. The Department of Finance actually gives us a discount rate in which that we can calculate this number. So we get that from them, and the loss in $1.5 million is a direct result of the net between that discount rate and then the value of our cash in the bank. We also have some additional funding. We do an interfunds transfers, again, more. So there's an indirect cost as it relates to CARES that we can reimburse the district. There's also what we call lost revenue recovery. And so if we can calculate, which of course my fiscal team is phenomenal, they're wonderful, and they do all these massive calculations. If we can actually express to our auditors and to the state how we have lost an income, so an example would be parking. Another example could be, okay, Jesse, now I just lost my head. So parking, that's another idea. Oh, I got one. So like when the class, I'm sorry, Jesse. So I just turned to Jesse because this is my fabulous executive director of budget. We also, so like when classes last year, if you remember, those of you who were here, we actually had a reduction in the way in which we filled our classes. So the classes were reduced by 50%. So we can calculate then what the loss in the income based on FTS, and we can go for those funds as well. So those are just examples. If we can express those losses, we can actually gain those funds back. Now let's shift to the expenses piece, the COVID-19 impact. So between academic and classified salaries, you will notice on the full report, we are still down in overall expenses about $10 million. Where does that show up? Well, that shows up in maybe there aren't the same number of classes that have been offered and budgeted before, and so if we can't fill classes, it's hard for us to have instructors teach classes that don't have students in them. And so there's still some pieces down there. There's some, it's always a challenge to fill our positions very quickly. Remember, we're competing in a very competitive market as it relates to employment. And so some of our positions stay open longer than we would anticipate or want them to be. And so we'll see those on as in terms of salary savings. Our expenses actually between last year and this year, we did a really great job sort of projecting the new calculation. So we're only about $300,000 off. which the only reason why I point that out is because last year I feel like we were like $3 million off, and so we were able to fine-tune that number in a really important way. And our services and our expenses are down still by $4.5 million. And so that could be, again, based on, as we continue to use our buildings and services more, our utilities costs start to go up, and so we start to get back to those pre-pandemic usage numbers. All right, so I always, my eye always goes to, okay, so I get how we ended. I understand what our revenue and our expenses are for this upcoming year, but let's talk about transfers. And transfers are monies that the district has intentionally and thoughtfully thought about how do we take money from the unrestricted general fund to fund additional sorts of activities that the district needs. And so you'll see that we make always a heavy investment where we can in our capital outlay transfers. So that was about $15 million. And some of those pieces are targeted projects to help the district move forward. An example of that would be like gender-neutral bathrooms and lactation rooms. There is a commitment that this district sort of come up to the times of where we need to be, not only for compliance reasons, but because we sort of value inclusion here on this campus. So it's important for us to then make those designations and then transfer those funds into the capital outlay fund to use. What we should see in the anticipation of a potential bond measure being approved, over years, if that gets approved, we would see the capital outlay transfer potentially go down in future years. But we may make different contributions. So examples of that would be our OPEB liabilities, our OPEB self-insurance fund, and our property liability self-insurance fund. Typically, we pre-fund those items for the fiscal year so that we're making those investments, and those are earmarked to cover the district's liabilities. So you'll see the $4 million tag there. This is the similar strategy that we did last year. And of course, we do some transfers to our trust and agency. Some commission checks that come into the district actually go back out to support associated students, and as well as the college's centennial fund. This is just a quick summary of the summary, or this is more of the detail of those pieces of what our projected fund balances are in each of those accounts. This is the piece that we always want to make sure that we're reporting on every year, because there's clearly always a fiscal implication when you're talking about budgeted FTE positions. One important thing to note, since we don't have a formal presentation on the 311, we'll ask you later to approve that, would be in the 311, we have to assert that the college has met its 50% law, which is that 50% of our funds are reserved for instructional activities, and we met that obligation this last year. Between 21-22 and 22-23, the difference between the total FTE positions is there's a growth there of about 7-8 positions there between last fiscal year and how we ended, or how we project for 2022-23. Everybody is always wanting to get a quick update. I see my student trustee over there smiling at me about the CARES, her funds. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the institutional portion and then move into the student portion for you all. So as quickly looking at this, if you look at the balance as of date, so there's a balance as of June 30th of 21, a balance of June 30th of 22. If you just sort of go to the right, basically you will see this, that our total award at the beginning was about $64 million in CARES funding for the institutional portion. Okay, the institutional portion can be used for safety issues, PPE, positions. We've used it for stipends related to distance education, et cetera. There's a pretty wide area that we can use that funding for, as long as we can clearly demonstrate that those funds are associated with the pandemic. So we started with $64 million. If you see our expenses through those years, so the first year, We were able to expend about $12 million, $12.5 million, and got down to $51 million. The end balance of this last June 30th of 2022, we expended $33 million of our CARES funding, $34 million, and which leaves us with about $16 million of HERF between all of these various grants. And then we already have encumbered and are making some decisions about some of the funds. And so right now, we have $13 million to get us from now until the end, which is June 30th of 2023. One thing that's really important, so out of this, it doesn't mean that we can't use the institutional portion to support students, and we do. UPass, which is Transit Pass, has been covered fully for our students using these funds. A bookstore credit, so our students receive, if they're enrolled, either non-credit or credit, a $200 credit. And we cover all the materials and health fees for our students, both for this fall semester. We did it last year, and we're continuing that effort this year to continue to support our students. This is the student portion of those funds. So the total award of those funds, if you think about it, between the two pots of money, it's over $100 million that the institution has had. 41 million and a half, some change. And these awards, these funds actually have to be given directly to students. So they hit their pockets. They don't pass through and say, please give me this and this other ways. This is direct aid to students, which Dr. Olivo and her team help to manage the algorithms and the calculations of how to disperse these funds. They're very diligent about having a strategy for both fall and spring semester. So our financial aid director, David Hull, and his team work really incredibly well to make sure we're actively figuring out who is in the greatest need. We also have a process through emergency aid where students can express if they have additional need. That's through the basic cares and center and Little Answers Care piece that somebody can express and raise their hand that they have additional need additional financial support. So the balance as of today, or as of 8/12/2022, so August 12th, we have $12 million to expend, $12.5 million to expend out to students before our deadline, which is 6/30 of 2023. All right, so I always get asked this question, which I like because it gives me an opportunity to express our funds in different ways. And in this piece, so last year we had talked about, well, how do we spend like technology funds or facilities funds and those sorts of efforts? And since those items tend to be multi-year and the data is pretty similar to that last year, we chose to show some strategic investments in our grants and capital outlay pieces. So one of the important pieces that we always are clear about, our restricted funds are institutional funds. They are not less than. They are just as important to the college as our unrestricted general funds. And so we want to make sure that people understand that this is a revenue source for the district, and this is how we make those investments. And so all I did was pull the top 10 programs, the restricted programs. The total funds is about $193 million. So if you think about the $200 million in unrestricted general fund budget, and then you add that with the $193 million restricted fund budget, it's an important amount, it's a significant amount of money that our teams are managing to make sure that we are good fiscal agents over. And so some of those top pieces, the largest is going to be our CARES institutional, because that is a restricted fund that has really clear guidance on. I pull that out because I want folks to know, remember, these funds disappear in a year. Right? So that 34%, what we have access today that's supporting a lot of programs and actually some staff and pieces, it does go away from a year. So we need to be, again, thinking about what are those items that are currently funded with that we can move to other sort of either restricted funds or general unrestricted funds. So I just put that in the back of your mind as we're working through this next year. But some of the largest pieces are going to be certainly our student equity dollars that are sort of matched with student equity. You see that in orange, which are coupled with our credit triple SP dollars, the student success dollars. Those tend to be our largest dollars that come into the institution to support. Our Pasadena Promise Grant, which is a financial aid piece, awards to students. DSPS, EOPS also are our larger restricted fund investments. Guided pathways, and I know that you often see contracts related to the NSF Micro Nano Tech Education Center grant that we then subaward to others, and so that's described here. What is taken out, though, so I just want to, some of the larger funding, restricted funds related to the LA Consortium are also there. They're just not expressed here. But we wanted to kind of give the top restricted funds that we've normally had access to, not the new funds that we just recently taken on as an institution. Capital outlay, remember we have lots of facilities needs, and so you'll see some of the top capital outlay expenditures in this last fiscal year. And so there was about 17, almost $18 million in these 10 projects. And we just calculate based on the contract value and the expenses related to those pieces. So a lot of that is around our U building, our Seraphian replacement, you know, the district funded pieces, and also the FF&E pieces that we will anticipate. There's certainly facilities renovations. I don't know if you know, we actually own property right on Bonnie, and so we have to care and maintain those properties, and so there's some investments there. Parking lot for rehabilitation, and we're actually in the process of finishing up work on a new power distribution center that'll be supporting our Seraphian building and potentially a new STEM building in the future. That was a lot, and I'm going to take a deep breath and then see if you all have any questions.
Trustee Gibson.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you said this. I just want to hear it again because a student asked me. The the textbook allotment is going to be available in this coming year.
Right? Yes, sir. In the spring, we will offer it. It actually is still currently offered for the fall semester. It's good through September 11th, so our census date this Sunday. And then we will re-offer it again in the spring to support spring classes as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to add that it's valid until this Friday in person and till Sunday online.
Thank you for the clarification, Trustee Gomez.
Any other questions? Trustee Osterling?
Yeah. I have a number of questions. Hopefully they'll be quick.
Okay.
I'm going to go by your slide pages, and on our copy, our hard copy, sometimes it's hard to see that page in the lower right. But on page 4, it says, due to the SAL, continued revenue growth could increase the state's constitutional funding obligations and lead to large budget deficits. On the face of it, that seems contradictory. Can you just, if you can, briefly try to explain what that means?
Sure. So the way that the GAN limit, so the GAN limit was this proposition in the 1970s that was put into place. And so the limit in terms of the way that the state can, it was put in place to put some limits on what the state could expend in any fiscal year and give out. And so those limits, while there's a little bit of inflation placed on it, there's certainly some cost of living adjustments to the calculation. The cost of the services that the state is investing in far exceeds at times those limitations. And so while the state has received billions of dollars in surplus funding, there are strict sort of limitations on where they can invest those funds into. So you'll notice that in the governor's budget, a lot of the investments go into infrastructure pieces. Those pieces are not governed by the GAN limits. And so you can then, so the state is able to use those excess funds to contribute to certain areas, but areas like housing or areas like, because I'm just talking about the state in general, housing or childcare, they can't make those same investment in those pieces, and the cost escalation in those areas far exceed where, so then there becomes this imbalance in terms of where the state can actually contribute its funds, which is why they're also tucking a bit of that away in the reserves.
Okay, and then moving on to, thank you. And then moving on to page 5, just the, and this shows up in several pages, but the lost revenue recovery from CARES and HERF grants. I don't know what that term means, lost revenue recovery.
Yeah, so lost revenues could be the district, for example, if we could calculate, so this number is starting to lessen, but an example would be like our civic events. The district used to gain lots of revenue based on renting facilities all across campus, right? And during the pandemic, we've been really inhibited by our ability to do some of those pieces, right? Parking is another great example. If people aren't here, we're not earning parking revenue, which is sort of supposed to be this self-sustaining entity. And so if we can come up with a calculation and reasonably explain where those lost revenues happen to our auditors, we can then draw down those funds against CARE.
Okay, and then still on page 5, we had a surplus of $8.5 million rounded. And do we plan to put that into OPEB reserve or continue to build up our unfunded pension liability? What's the game plan for that surplus in the general unrestricted fund?
It's a great question. So where that $8 million went at the close of the books was in the reserves. So in our normal district reserves, so remember we have a policy related to, we have to have a reserve of 18%. And so that just added to our reserve calculations. But one thing I failed to mention, so I'm glad you brought it up. In this year's adopted budget, we actually earmarked, okay, so we're trying to get out of the strategy of always pre-funding OPEB and property and liability based on savings. Things that, instead we're working towards a model where we're actually budgeting those expenses within the fiscal year. So you'll notice both on the closeout of fiscal year, but in the budgeted amount for 2022-23, we have budgeted $2.3 million. We clearly pre-funded it. So the additional $2.3 million is tagged to be invested in our irrevocable trust.
Okay.
But that allows us, now that we've gotten into the cadence of making sure that we're budgeting for both of those activities. This year we budgeted just for OPEB. Next year we'll do OPEB and our property and liability. But that additional $2.3 million, our intention is to invest it when the time is appropriate.
Okay, and then page 7 is the fund balances for all the funds, and I'm looking specifically at Fund 41, which is the capital outlay fund, and the income number there is approximately $24.5 million. And is that from the COPS, the certificates of participation that we sold?
That's actually our deferred maintenance that we receive from the state.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Almost done. Moving on to page 9, again, the capital outlay fund, this is the transfers for $15 million, and you mentioned gender neutral bathrooms and lactation rooms, and I imagine there's more than that isn't going to consume the $15 million?
That's correct. There's a project list that we always designate for the year.
You don't have to give me the whole list.
Okay, thank you.
And then moving on to, I think this is page 12, and it's the budgeted FTE positions, and I'm aware of the 50% requirement. And I notice on the right-hand side, the 2022-23, the academic is actually slightly under 50%. It's close, but it's under. It's about 48.9%. left-hand side, we're in compliance. And I just wanted to call that to your attention. That's still this upcoming year, so I know things move.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. And then on slide number 12, this is the CARES here for institutional portion, and I'm just looking at the footnotes down at the bottom, and it mentions anticipated future projects, student-related. One item is the UPass, and I thought that Metro had changed their policy, and they were 100% funding UPasses for students and other groups, but maybe I'm wrong, and we, the college, are funding it?
Yeah, so I would, Dr. Dean Cobb would be able to say there is no free lunch. Right? So there is no free lunch. And so the way that they describe that to others, there still is a cost to the district. And so right now, when we're talking about UPass, we're using that to fund those costs for students who leverage
Right,
that
and
pass.
so that works through June 30th of 2023, and then we
Correct.
go back to the old model where our students
Correct.
have to contribute again.
That's correct.
Okay, well, we'll keep lobbying Metro to.
Yes, make it free.
Yeah, okay. And then on the employee-related, two items are ventilation and PPE, pardon me. And I thought we had already completed our ventilation strategy implementation. I thought we had 1,500 ventilation units in every classroom and every administrative office. So I assumed that we were done spending money on that. And I know you have to, it's a good problem to have, but you got to get this money spent by
Yes.
June of next year. But I didn't know that we had more of that area of funding to continue.
Yeah, so the ventilation piece, so again, you have a great memory. So yes, we did roll out all of the air purifiers. You'll see one right behind you sitting there. Those purifiers require filters, and those filters have to be replaced. And so some of the funding to address all of the ongoing sort of maintenance of those items. There's
Yeah.
also a project to mount those to the walls. So they're not in units that are on the floor. So we have bids out for both CEC and the Colorado campus to get those mounted.
Okay, and then this is my last slide. This is slide, I think it's slide 16. It's the pie chart with the capital outlay of the top 10 items, and really the top two are the U building, the district-funded portion, the orange and the blue. But on this list of the top 10, which of these items, if any, will we be able to pay for if we do have a successful ballot initiative for bonds? In other words, can we?
Use bond funding for these in the future?
To refund, if that's the right word, these outlays, these capital outlays.
So some of those pieces, so depending on which of the pieces, the funds may have already been expended and the project completed. So it
Right.
just sort of depends on which one.
And can we get understood, Ms. Jones, but can we get a reimbursement from the bond proceeds for any of these after the fact?
None of them are actually listed in our bond language. So for example, it's
Well, you can
possible,
start
there
from
are
the
a
top
couple.
and you can start from the top and go down.
Yeah, there are a
The U
couple.
building money, we get to,
We're going to reimburse the district
Yeah.
based on the COPs
and
that
then
are
facility
funded.
renovations, that's in our language.
Yes, so
Okay.
that would be okay. It just sort of depends on what's
Yeah.
being described in what buildings.
Yeah, and then the health science division office remodel, that would qualify, I'm guessing, I'm making that statement.
This one, actually, the expenses that are needed to complete that project have already been encumbered, so yes, that's possible.
Okay.
The other one that's in here that we would use with bond proceeds is the outdoor instructional space called the Octagon. That's the blue one. We may be able to gain some on the power distribution under our infrastructure piece.
Yeah, I would encourage us to
To look
do the
there.
best we can to get as much of this reimbursed, if that's
Yep.
the right word, from bond proceeds if we're successful.
Great advice.
And that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Who would like to follow up? John, Trustee Martin.
I don't have questions. I do have a comment.
I suspected that. Go ahead.
So, in this is one of the better budgets that I've seen, and we are allocating a unusually high proportion towards capital outlay projects as an opportunity to catch up. This is kind of coming from the Budget and Audit Committee. And we have, this is for 22-23, and we will be under hold harmless with the state for 22-23, and I believe for 23-24.
That's correct.
But then we get to 24-25. And in some ways, I kind of feel like that old-fashioned movie where they take the really handsome guy and the really beautiful girl and they pump them full of food and they treat them really well and then they throw them in a volcano to the gods kind of idea. I kind of feel like we're getting...
Interesting analogy.
Yeah, kind of feeling like we're getting really kind of pumped up here right now because we're under hold harmless. Things are really well.
It's a new one.
But there is a day of reckoning coming, and as our next information item shows, where we're looking at enrollment, we have some serious concerns.
Yeah.
So would be my direction to the extent possible to try to put aside the years of plenty as much as possible in preparation for the years of famine, which at this point look like they will be coming. This is obviously a statewide phenomena, so we're not alone. But we also know from prior reports that there are demographic challenges coming to the community, to the general community college age population as well, which will make repopulating back to some of those healthy FTES numbers of a few pre-COVID years ago very difficult. And so I think it's beholden on us to be exceptionally prudent and in ways that are possible. And though I know there's a lot of capital projects that need to get done, to the extent possible that we can preserve some of this in the event that 2 years from now our base drops, there's not a hold harmless, there's not a student influx that we all hope will happen. I think to the extent that we could do that, we would be very wise. So that is my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments and questions? Thank you, Candace. That was a terrific presentation, and certainly please extend our thanks to your team as well for putting together this budget presentation.
Thank you.
So now it's the adoption of the proposed 22-23 budget and fund allocations. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now we have the adoption of the annual 311 financial report, fiscal year 2021, 2022, and budget report, fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? None. Passes. Motion passes. Now we have an adoption, to adopt the resolution number 739 to establish gain appropriation limits for 2022 and 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? None. Passes. Okay. Mary, am I going to close the public hearing right now, or do I continue?
Should have been closed back at that item. Are you good? I guess you could close it now.
Okay, we close.
How many of those items, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, were part of the public hearing? Just item 1 or all 5 of those? Item 1 only, okay.
So I'm going to close the public hearing for the budget. Now on item I6 is ratified amendment number 1 to contract number B220080 with Atkinson, Edison, Loya, Rudd, and Romo, a professional corporation to provide counsel to the Board of Trustees and special services as needed. Before we take the vote, I would like to invite Irma Rodriguez-Moisa and her colleague Paul McLaughlin.
Good evening. I'm Irma Rodriguez-Moisa, and this is my partner, Paul McLaughlin. We are both partners in the law firm of Atkinson Anderson, Loya, Rude, and Romo. For those of you not familiar with our firm, I'd like to share with you a little bit about it and be prepared to answer any questions. Before I start about the presentation on the firm, let me just briefly tell you about myself, which is that I have been a practicing attorney for 30 years. I have represented public entities for over 25 years, and I began my legal career as a civil rights attorney. I focus my practice on advising different boards with respect to a variety of different matters. I have served as general counsel in the past, and I have also advised many public entity clients, including community college districts, with respect to their most sensitive items. Let me pass it on to Paul, and then I will go into the firm.
Good evening. I've never been accused of being quiet, so please let me know if I'm not speaking loudly enough. My name's Paul McLaughlin, as Ms. Rodriguez-Moisa said. I'm also with the firm out of our Pasadena office. We have an office on Lake Avenue here, so just right down the street. I've been with the firm since 2008. Actually, before I was certified as an attorney, I've been a licensed attorney for 13 years. 100% of my practice is dedicated to representing K-12 and community college districts. Through pretty much everything from employment matters, labor relations, general counsel. That's kind of also what our firm does. We're really a full service firm when it comes to those practice areas. So I've not been at it as long as Ms. Rodriguez-Moisa, but we are a full service firm in that we have many attorneys who practice in the same areas, a lot of bench strength.
Alrighty, so let me tell you a little bit about Atkinson, Anderson, Loya, Rude, and Romo. Our firm was founded in 1979, and it was founded primarily to work with educational clients. Jim Romo, Paul Loya, and Steve Anderson primarily worked with the PERB, the Public Employment Relations Board, and established this firm. We act as advisors to both the boards as a whole, general counsel, and also to our administrators. We have been trusted advisors to many educational institutions, and we currently represent 51 of all the community college districts statewide. Many of our clients have been with the firm since 1979. We value the fact that we have these long-term relationships, and they reflect the fact that we are excellent attorneys, excellent communicators, and responsive to your calls and needs. We are very conscientious about the cost of legal services and work very hard to ensure that we're providing you the best value for the services, and in addition to that, ensuring that we get the best resolutions for you on all of your matters. Now, another big core value of our firm is diversity. At Atkinson Andelson, diversity is not something we just say, it's something we do. We have been recognized statewide and nationally for the diversity of our lawyers and particularly of the diversity of at the ranks of partner. Currently, 37% of all of our partners are women, 31% of our partners are people of color, and overall 37% of our attorneys are people of color. We are very proud of the awards that we've received, again, statewide and nationally. We are also very proud of the fact that we are actively involved in the Community College League of California, in particularly helping draft their Brown Act reviews and policies, and we provide advice to the State Chancellor's Office as well. In terms of the overall services, because this is a contract not only for general counsel services, but we also do employment, labor relations, student affairs, business and financial affairs, and public construction work for many of our community college clients. And we serve as general counsel currently to, I believe it's 10 community college districts here in Southern California, and I think 2 up in the Bay Area. And so we have the bench strength, and we have the knowledge, and we have the ethics, and we have the integrity to be able to provide to you the best services that you as a board would need, and that obviously your faculty, your administration would need. We have access also to crisis communication consultants and professionals should there be any, hopefully it wouldn't happen, but crisis management that would need to occur on the legal side and communication side. We also conduct a lot of preventative training programs for our community college clients, and we are a big believer in taking a preventative approach. Whenever there's a piece of litigation or an administrative challenge of some sort, we work with our clients to debrief afterwards to say, what did we do right? What could we have done better? Are there some institutional changes that need to happen as a result of the lessons that were learned? Because that's how we will ultimately create the best environment for our students and provide the best services. And so I'll leave you with that we also are a very strong community partner with our clients. We are actively involved in their various community events, foundations, and believe that as a good corporate citizen, that is part of our responsibility. Most of us went into this practice because we believe that working with our public agencies is in fact part of doing public service and giving back. So let me let Paul end with anything that he might want to add and then open it up for questions that you might have.
I don't know that I can add much as succinctly and as well put, but just to emphasize that last point, we really do work closely with a lot of statewide agencies. We work very closely with the Chief Information Security Officers Association, acting as their counsel to provide all of their legal training. We were at ACRO a couple weeks ago during their Negotiators Academy. Just as a couple of examples, we really take it upon ourselves to be working with these statewide partners, and we like to be visible. And I really emphasize the training portion. We like to take a preventive approach, and we do take that very seriously, including with governance, Brown Act, Public Records Act. This is something that we often present on and we're proud to. And it's a service that we really feel is just invaluable to our clients. So with that, we're happy to answer any and all questions that you have.
I just want to offer, it's great to have you back serving the board. The board, when I came, was working with Warren Kinsler for a long time. He not only wrote and negotiated my employment contract, he also did a lot of Brown Act training. So it's great to have you back on board.
Well, thank you very much. And Warren has retired, but if he's welcome back, I'm sure we could try to, bring him back.
He served so well first time around.
Yeah,
so
yes, yeah. But he retired last year.
He still takes classes here, though.
Oh, he takes classes here.
Does.
Oh, that's great.
He was upset he had to cancel his Italian vacation because he did very well in Italian. Italian 101. Yes.
Yep.
I have a question.
I did not know that.
Thank you, Ms. Moisa and Mr. McLaughlin for coming tonight. Can you share a little bit about the firm's commitment to actively recruiting attorneys of color, how you go about doing that, how you appropriately mentor them to prepare them for partnership, and whether or not you make a commitment to promoting attorneys of color into your partnership? Sure. This is an area that's near and dear to my heart, as you can all imagine, as a person who grew up in a working class background in Ventura County with no role models for college or even law school attendance. And so as I have moved up in my own professional ranks, it is very important to me to pay it forward, if you will. I'm a firm believer that if you want diversity, you're going to get diversity, bottom line. And that's the values of my firm. And so what we do is we make concerted efforts to ensure we are recruiting in a way that is diverse, that seeks out all potential candidates, and also, quite frankly, the fact that we have so many partners of color and women partners honestly makes it so much easier for us to recruit, because it is a place where young law students can come and see that we are replicated in our law firm, and they can see that this is a place that they can succeed. So what do? So obviously we go out and we recruit far and wide and as far as we can. And obviously, from the records I've shared with you, we have the #1 top percentage of people of color as percentage of partners in any firm in the state. And our firm is 220 attorneys. So we are not a 10-person law firm that has 3 people of color. We are a 220 law firm, attorney law firm with over 60 people of color as partners in our practice. So I think that those numbers speak very highly for our commitment to this. But we work hard to ensure that as people come into our firm, that we are hiring people who we believe are going to be partners one day. That is our commitment, #1. #2, how do you do that? You ensure that they have the proper opportunities for challenging, interesting assignments, client contact, all those things that we all have to do as young lawyers to develop our skill set. And then, of course, in a law firm, what's very important, as you can imagine, is business development and client relationships. Because in a law firm, it comes down to what is your client? What kind of clients do you have? And so we work really hard to ensure that all of our attorneys, and including, of course, our attorneys of color, have contacts and abilities to present, to develop relationships, and to get those opportunities so that clients call them and they're developing their own book of business. So we're very proud of our numbers, and that's what we do.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a kind of a question, comment. So first, I also believe that Hugh Lee of your Orange County office, I think.
Hugh was out of our Cerritos office.
Cerritos.
Yes. That's where I'm
Represented
located.
PCC on our bond.
Yes.
On our Measure P bond. Did an exceptional job from what I could tell when I was on the committee. So I have no question about the firm. The firm appears by this action to work for the board, and as we know, it takes 4 votes of the board for the board to be the board. And it seems like that might be, in the end, necessary, I think. But as an interim between the board so that things may process more smoothly, I would suggest that as part of the motion to accept the firm, maybe the board could give the executive committee of the board the representation of the board to process some of these at the committee level, shall we say, for what needs to come back to the full board. I think that's why we have an executive team to kind of represent the board, at least as the kind of ad hoc committee to work with the firm as needed for these kinds of things. So if that's it just seems to me, I'm just trying to think through it, that might be a friendly amendment that we could make to expedite the way the board might be able to work with a firm so that you're not coming back with every question to 7 members, though ultimately, obviously, any kind of official action would require that.
If I may just briefly respond in terms of my understanding of the contract you're approving, the contract provides for both, obviously generalized services, so that we can provide whatever other services, labor relations, student services advice, and also for general counsel advice to the board. And the way we've drafted the contract is that the president superintendent gives us direction and delegates to us and assigns to us the work on any sort of general district questions, legal work, and the board or the board's designee, however you might determine who that designee is, would direct us and give us assignments as the board would
Okay,
need.
good to know. I'm really
Yes.
comfortable with the usual superintendent president is running point on this. So no amendment needed there. We'll go with the superintendent that runs everything else so well for us.
Well, no, the board would direct us on board-related issues if they felt that they needed to give us
Okay.
specific
So-
direction.
So
And the
then
way
I
it's
would
drafted,
circle
yes.
back on board-related issues. It could get difficult to call a lot of special meetings to get 4 votes. And I would be comfortable with the board executive committee, our executive officers, running point for us, similar to the way the budget and audit committee ran point on the budget. We met, we discussed a few things, we worked out a few things and presented the big picture back to the full board and for final decision, of course. So I'm just trying to make sure we're not creating a system that we can't manage. So as a proactive suggestion, I would just say turn it over to our executive team.
I think as an administrative matter, I mean, thank you for your comments. It is important that when you retain outside counsel, that they receive direction, that they understand the precise legal issue, and that they receive a uniform question as to what the legal issues are so it doesn't get confusing. And so Atkinson Anderson will report to the superintendent on general issues outside of the board. When it comes to board issues, the attorney will report to the board or his or her designee, and that is outside the jurisdiction of the law firm. That is something for the Board of Trustees to decide, but is not within the purview of a law firm to decide.
Okay, so my answer to that is what I stated, that in order so that you don't have to come back to the full board, rather than naming a single designee, which we really don't do on any of our topics, we have committees, usually of 3, I would suggest that designee be our executive team, the officers of the board.
The board committees do have board chairs, do have committee chairs. And so in our board policy, I believe that the board chair has the authority to work with legal teams on certain issues. And so we want to make sure that there is no confusion between board issues and district issues. And there is no formal executive committee that's named on any of the board policies.
Okay, well, the term executive committee for decades has been the term that we reference to the board officers. But if the term board officers is more acceptable, I'm happy to say that board officers, and you as our board chair, obviously are the chair of the board officers by default. So in the same way as I, as the chair of the Budget and Audit Committee, lead those meetings and conduct those things, may ask questions first to see the agenda, then I would say it goes to the full committee, to review the bigger questions, and then we, the board, can get some of the sifted versions. I'm just trying to expedite this.
So it would be
Things don't require, coming here for 4 votes.
Yeah, so it would be expedited to have the board chair have the conversation with the attorneys and then report back to the board, either in closed session or in open session.
So one person alone would be talking with the lawyers without other people on the conversation?
No, the one person will be speaking to the lawyers and bring the lawyers back into closed session discussions. So there is not going to be one person deciding on action. the attorneys will come into closed sessions or public sessions to have the issues be discussed. What we want to avoid is having 4 people having different conversations with the attorneys, and that's why there is a board designee, which is the board chair according to our board policy.
But why would this, to John's comment, why would this be so different from every other committee that, or way that we decide, collaboratively?
Because these issues that come to the board on board governance issues and on other issues are confidential and would need to be discussed in closed session first, many times, before it goes into public session. So on these other committees, there are no closed sessions for these other committee type of discussions. Those committees are all held in public views. But there are issues that pertain to personnel, that pertain to special services that would need confidentiality, and that happens in closed session before it gets reported out into public session.
So this is going into a discussion, which it should, because this is an agenda item. So to make, as we do with many discussions, I will make a motion. And if it gets a second, then we can specifically discuss the motion. And I would like to move that we accept the firm and the recommendation, and that the board's designees on governance issues would be our board officers. And obviously our board, separate from the motion, making a comment, obviously our board president is the leader of the board officers and would be the first to be contacted and engaged, and leading the rest of the officers in the broader discussions that would expedite anything necessary to come to the full board. That last section is just commentary. The motion is that we accept the recommendation and that the board designees on governance would be our elected board officers.
I second the motion.
I think that's an inefficient way of managing an attorney-client relationship. It should be focused on either the board president or the designee when the board president is not available. Because when you have too many people involved in an attorney-client communication, it creates a lot of confusion and really is a sense of creating more bureaucracy. The whole point really is to get advice in certain things such as compliance, legal compliance. When discussions are made between an attorney and the board, if it is a closed session item, the attorney will come in and one can deliberate with the full board in closed session and not just 3 or 4 officers. But the point of having one designee is to make it more efficient so that you can be effective in trying to stay in legal compliance.
Are we ready for a vote?
I would have a comment, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I try to be called on by our president before I speak. So on one side we have efficiency, and then on the other side we have a little bit of power. And again, using the Budget and Audit Committee as an example, we have tried to be very careful on the Budget and Audit Committee to parse questions, to make sure proper issues are raised, to give good feedback. But we've been also very careful, and especially I as chair of the Budget and Audit Committee, to not use that to make sure the budget represents any particular interest. And I'm checked by that because everything happens with 2 other board members representing us. And so I do believe, though, absolute power couldn't be very efficient, it also, in some cases, can be very dangerous. And so when we're talking about these things, I think it would be appropriate that the officers could be this committee, that the officers, because in many cases where Brown Act permits, they could meet in closed session if necessary, if they're Brown Act-related topics, and meet with our counsel and give a little more general direction. Obviously, I look to our board president to run point on all of that for us. We'd be the first. So that would be my flip side of that coin, shall we say, to efficiency.
I guess my confusion in some ways, I don't know if confusion is the right word, is that I don't think there should be any decision being made by any smaller body than the full board. I think if there is any actual direction, decision, I'm repeating myself now, directive, that would come from the full board. Just as any decision that we make in our meetings, it may be agendized, but no decision is made before, like the budget, before we voted on it by the full board. So that's why I'm a little confused, because my not only understanding, but my hope would be that any decision, any direction that would ever be made with a firm would be, I would prefer it to be the full board to be providing any direction or making any decisions.
Trustee Austin.
Thank you. So Trustee Wang agreed that any actual decision that would be made should and would be directed to the full board. And as Trustee Martin has already described, what we typically do with our committees is they do the more deeper dive, if you will, on whatever issue it might be. He mentioned budget and audit as an example. And then they make recommendations, which are then brought to the full board for a vote. So any matter would always be subject to the full vote of the board. But I think when we look at the trade-off between efficiency versus having the executive board of the officers interfacing with the law firm, in my view, we're better off to have those three people, their collective wisdom, questions, and so forth. And one of our executive officers is yourself, and you happen to have just taken the bar exam and completed law school. Congratulations for that. And I think that we would benefit from having a legal mind on our side in the interface with the law firm.
Yeah, I think the agenda item is clear, and I think it could be passed that way without any changing of designees or anything at this time. If in the future the board decide that some other change needs to be made, then we have the power to do that. So I think it could be passed as originally posted in the agenda without any changes around who the designees are, but that's my opinion.
The motion on the floor, and it's been seconded, is to ratify the contract, but with the amendment that's been proposed by Trustee Martin.
Trustee Martin.
Thank you. So I fully agree with Alton's position that we really want the full board making all the decisions. In some ways, I'd like to think of it this way. We pride ourselves here tremendously on diversity. And one of the things that diversity brings for us is a different perspective and view of the same item, similar to the old story of three blind men touching an elephant, and one's got the ear, and one's got the tail, and one's on the body, and they all feel different, and they're all touching an elephant, and they're all telling people what an elephant feels like. So when it comes to some of these very sensitive issues, I think, as Trustee Osterling stated, the broader wisdom of three and all the different feels of the elephant that they can bring to the discussion at the time would serve the full board well. So that would be my reason for supporting the amendment.
So we have a, go ahead.
I think the risk that you have when you have a subcommittee, you now have a legal committee making decisions and recommendations without the benefit of the entire board to consider it, and that's the risk. So it is actually more democratic to have one person to serve as a liaison who is not making decisions but is serving as a liaison with the legal inquiry, and then to have the attorney present it to the entire board. If you have a small subcommittee, the subcommittee will be vulnerable to starting to make decisions on behalf of the board, and that deprives the other board members from having a fair and full deliberation, having access to the outside counsel.
I don't
disagree with
believe
having
the
that
motion
committee.
was to restrict access to the board, to the legal counsel. The motion was to have a subcommittee as a point, and it was further clarified along the way that any matter that was voted on would be voted on by the full board. And if it isn't clear, at the time they were meeting in open or closed session, the full board would have access to outside counsel.
We have a motion and a second. Let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Just for clarity, a point of order, we're voting on the amendment, or are we voting on the action and the amendment?
We're voting on the amendment and the
Okay.
action on the amendment per your.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it is- so
That was
you'll-
just for point of clarity
Yes.
for all of us voting.
Yeah. So all those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? Motion did not pass. So now we're going to go to the original.
And for the record, it was, Mary probably saw it, it was 3 votes in favor, Silver, Usling, and Martin, along with the student trustee vote, and 4 votes against. Yeah, okay.
And now we have a vote on the amendment with the contract. Well, we have the vote on the amendment that has the designee as the board designee liaison, the chair.
I will make the motion.
All those in.
I'll second.
Second, okay. All those in favor? Okay. Okay. So all those opposed? Great. Motion passes.
Did you get it, Mary? There were 2 noes, I think, this time, and the student vote. Martin and-
Maybe we should use our
To
lights.
hire the firm, right?
Yeah, this was the full, yeah. Mhm. Okay.
Okay. That was the amendment to hire the firm.
That was the action to
Sure,
hire
and
the
them
firm,
to
or
hire-
really was
and
the official action,
yes,
not an
and
amendment.
and just to clarify so that trustees, so that is the motion to hire the firm, and the designee for the board will be the board chair.
That wasn't in, that is not what I voted for.
Okay, then that was, then fine, we can redo the vote. Okay.
Does the motion as, pardon me, does the agenda item as written deal with the designation of the point of contact with the firm?
No, we can, no, it doesn't, but we can certainly have a motion that does it, because Trustee Martin made a motion that had the board officers as the liaison to the firm, and then there's a motion by Trustee Gibson to have the chair be the designee for the board.
He did not so
I,
move.
I don't believe that's what he
did
moved.
not say
Trustee Gibson, what was your motion?
I may have, go ahead. What was your motion?
My motion was to contract with the firm, and I assumed that there was a single designee. I didn't say the word that that's the designee, but I assumed that there was, because in any contract like this, you have a designee, so I just assumed it, but I did not state it.
Okay, should he revise that motion? Would you rather him revise that motion to have a specific designee? Okay,
Yes.
okay, please.
Yeah, I will
So the
revise it.
motion was already passed, correct? So
If you did not want to vote for that motion,
I voted for the motion as it was stated,
Okay, if you
and
did
the
not-
motion passed.
so we
So-
can make a new motion.
Can you? I don't think so. Like revote an issue?
Because that was not clear.
It was clear.
Point
Wasn't clear
of
for you.
privilege.
It wasn't clear.
For you.
It was clear for, it was what Trustee Gibson assumed that there was a designee. It wasn't.
There
clear
was
for-
no assumption. We can go back and watch the video. What he stated was this as written. And it's easily verified.
So we can avoid that motion, Mary?
No,
Okay, we can make an amendment to that motion?
it's already been passed without amendment.
Point of clarifications, and maybe this is actually for you all.
You want free legal advice.
Well,
yes.
it wasn't even about the vote, actually.
Yeah.
It is for this drafted amendment to the contract. It does state that it would be a board designee in the contract in of itself. Is
It
that
does,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
And does the contract specify who that designee is?
It says the board president or designee.
Okay. So that's passed, then Trustee Silver.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So now we have Adoption Resolution 737.
Well, let me say thank you on behalf of our firm for the consideration and the honor of representing you. We will work very hard to ensure that you get the best services that are possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Contract for Services for Board Retreat, October 1st, 2022. So I want to make a clarification because for the board retreat, the time, it doesn't say on here, is from 8 to 2 p.m. And from my understanding that the Black family reunion happens after 2 o'clock. So, contract for services for board retreat. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the contract.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor for the contract for board retreat?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. All those opposed? Okay. No abstention, motion passes. 8, we have Adoption Resolution number 737 in support of Native American Day.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Adoption Resolution number 738 in support of National Hispanic Heritage Month.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I know our enrollment for Latinos, Latinas, Latinx students has fluctuated throughout the past years. Has it got back up to 50? Because I believe in this resolution it states that we're above 50, and last that I know, we were at 48.
Yeah, I know that our executive director of research is in the audience. I do believe what you're saying is accurate, that we're around 48% at this point.
If you look on the enrollment report, it does have headcount by ethnicity.
Sorry, my laptop died, so I can't pull up any attachments.
So it's slightly, yeah, it has slightly dipped during the pandemic.
I'll suggest that we approve this resolution with the amendment suggested by Trustee Gomez to accurately reflect the census.
Well, I think I made that motion, so I'm happy to amend the motion that I made to approve.
Yeah,
to
you go ahead
accommodate-
and do it.
To
Go
accommodate
ahead,
that.
Alton, yeah.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to accommodate that adjustment.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None? Okay, motion passes. Now we have the information items. One is enrollment report. Dr. Ramirez?
Can you post it?
It's up there.
It's on the computer. Yeah.
It's ready for you.
Thank you. So what you have in front of you is basically a comparison of our 21-22 enrollment versus 2021. You can see we've taken quite a hit with the pandemic. So overall, we have our head count, which is actually the number of students enrolled, number of bodies. You have the number of seats that we offer, so that's basically the number of sections, the number of seats per section, how many we have total as a college. And you see we have fall, spring, and winter. Capacity is basically where we are based on the number of seats, what our percentage is. So how many students are actually enrolling. We know that we have some very low enrolled sections. And part of our strategy this semester, this year, has been really to make sure that our in-person classes remain open. We have actually quite a few students, we have quite a few enrollments that are in person. We've increased the number of in-person enrollments. So if you look down at the next page, you'll see that we're about, as of today, maybe 6,000 more in-person enrollments and online. And then I've broke it up between credit and non-credit. We've had quite a jump in our non-credit enrollments, especially in the area of ESL. And then at the very bottom of this page, you see FTS. So that's actually the number of full-time equivalent students at the end of the academic year that we get funded for. So if you recall from the budget report, we had an apportionment number. That comes from our full-time equivalent student enrollments for the whole academic year. And if you go down to the next page, we have our 22-23. So throughout the year, I'll provide the board an opportunity to take, snapshots throughout the different semesters, spring, summer, fall. So right now, you can see where we're trending for fall as compared to fall of 21. FTS, we're at about 6,100, so we are below, but we still have quite a few sections that are not done yet, right? We have late start sections, we have positive attendance, which means we don't know what our FTS is until the end of the year. And same thing for non-credit. Again, our annual FTS for 21-22 was 14,611, and so we'll be comparing that as we move forward in the 22-23 academic year. Fall 22, again, looking at our available seats, and this is as of September 1st and what our enrollments look like. Our in-person enrollments are trending higher than our online, so we're really happy to see that. We know that as an institution, online is pretty new for us. Right? Prior to the pandemic, we had a very small number of online sections available to students. So this new modality, we know that there's a demand, and as we move forward in planning for the rest of this year and next year, we will continue to invest in having more online enrollments as well. Any questions so far?
Dr. Ramirez, a quick question. When we use the term hybrid, can you explain what a hybrid course would look like? Is
Sure.
there one model or is there several?
It's a course where part of the course is offered via online, usually asynchronous, which means a student does work independently, and part of the class is in person. Typically, this is for our CTE programs where we have a laboratory or an online component. Also for our natural sciences, we have a number of hybrid courses where the lecture is done online, the student can access that information that way, and then the lab is done in person.
Thank you.
Dr. Ramirez, may I ask that you go back to the others, to the slide.
Yes.
So we have 7490 FTEs of spring, and we're looking at where is fall of 2022? Where are we now?
So this first chart compares our 2021 academic year to 21-22. For our current semester for fall 22, oh, where did it go? It's
Blanked
missing.
out.
It was here.
Page 2.
Thank you.
Can we just reopen the document?
Yeah. Thank you.
There you go.
There we go. So typically, we compare academic year to academic year. So here, you'll see the fall 22 compared to fall 21.
I have a question, if I may. Would you say fall of 2020 is kind of base year pre-COVID?
Right.
Is
So
that
if we go back
the
up.
way for us to think of that?
No, that was the heart of COVID.
Fall of 2020, we were.
That would be COVID, that would be like September 2020, not September 19 through,
No, fall 20 is September of 20.
is September of 20.
Yes.
So that's the heart of COVID.
Yeah. Any other questions? The last component, or the last slide here, shows our head count by ethnicity. I know last year the board requested information about our ethnic distribution of students. Here we go again. Oops.
So, if I may, I have a question. Oh, look to the vice president, I guess.
Trustee Martin.
So to go back to pre-COVID, we would be, what, fall of 2019?
1920.
Which we don't have here, and so I don't expect you to whip it off the top of your head.
Right.
Unless Crystal's in the
I
back
can
and
pro-
happens
I
to
can
know
provide
it.
that at a future date. I can provide information
Yeah.
on pre-COVID numbers.
Because it would be my assumption, and maybe Candace knows the answer to this, that that's the number that our base is probably, our base funding for Hold Harmless might be more in tune with than the
Which is about
2020
20,
number.
I think 23,000.
Yes.
Is our base about 23,000?
Mhm.
23,000 head count.
FTS per year.
23,000 FTS, and so we would need to add winter, spring, summer, fall
Right.
together to see how we are really doing. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can you go to the last slide, please?
Sure. Let's hope it comes up. There it is. So this is our head count, actual number of students versus enrollments, which means how many classes they're enrolled in, right? You can have one student enrolled in one class or multiple classes, so.
Can you go a little bit? I want to know what, I'm interested in knowing what the enrollment numbers are. Hoping, and I believe that there has been improvements for Black students present. I see you have the unit counts, but is there specific percentages that you may
So
be able to provide?
percentages by number of, by head count or by enrollment, I can break that down and provide it at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, actually, I do have one, because now I'm trying to just quickly do the math on where we are compared to 23,000 based on this.
FTS.
FTES,
The 23,000 is FTS.
Right.
For the whole year.
So I'm looking at spring '22 at 5,700, summer 2,000 and change, and fall coming in over 6,000. So 6,285 is 13. Give us another 100 for all the little stuff. We're about 14,000, unless I'm missing some period like a winter or something, which I don't think we had, right?
Correct. We do not have winter.
Yeah. So we're about trending, and it can go up. We're trending right now someplace just north of 14,000 FTES, and our base is based on 23.
Correct.
Okay, that goes back to my earlier budget comments of concern, so that's why.
We have a short window of time, yes, before we're no longer in hold harmless.
Right.
To start definitely looking at enrollment patterns and what we can do to support more student enrollments. I think what's important also is that with the student-centered funding formula, it's not just enrollments, but also persistence and completers. So we need to make sure that the students we have, we hold on to, that we have, access to them, for them to be able to complete a program of study. So it's not just FTES anymore as it was years back. As we're rolling out of the hold harmless, rolling out of it, we're going to be using the student-centered funding formula, which means we have to look at completions, awards, certificates, math and English completion, as well as financial aid status and what types of, financial aid we're offering, because we get points for that as well, Pell Grant recipients, and a number of other groups.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. We look forward to next month's enrollment report. Okay, Superintendent President's report.
Okay, well, classes are underway. It's been great walking around campus and seeing students everywhere, and it just feels like there's a lot of energy going on. And you just had an enrollment report, so I don't need to speak to that. We did have a professional development day on the Friday before classes started. We kicked off a multi-year focus on trauma-informed approaches to everything, basically, to our campus climate. That involves becoming trauma-aware, trauma-informed, and that was really in response to a groundswell of interest on the topic from faculty and staff in the wake of the pandemic and everything we've been through collectively, both as an institution and as a community. We started, I think I have mentioned, our executive team started with its first training on August 22nd, and the speaker that we had on Professional Development Day did that training and will be continuing the training throughout the year. And it's really important for us as administrators, as classified staff, working with the faculty to really consider multiple perspectives when we engage with each other, and this type of training helps us recognize that and gives us the tools we need to do that. So I think there'll be a lot of updates coming when it comes to that. So as I think I've mentioned in other meetings, we're going to be instituting monthly forums that the executive committee will be doing, and tomorrow is our first one, and it is from noon to 1, and the focus of that is near and dear to your heart. It's the budget that you just approved, and it is an opportunity for us to present the budget to the campus, to answer questions. We will be here in person, but it will also be available online, so individuals can, and it will be recorded, so if people can't be there, they can go ahead and watch that. I imagine there'll be some other questions, and we'll be here to answer those questions. Last week, the draft accreditation standards were released by the ACCJC, and PCC has been very involved in that process. Our very own Crystal Colross, as well as Dr. Thea Alvarado, were involved in the writing and reading teams related to the revision of standards, and I am on the 6-person leadership team of the state reviewing and we worked with those groups as those standards were reviewed. To put it in real numbers, there were, under the old standards that we're currently working with, there are 128 standards and substandards. The proposed standards, there are 54. So we have massively cut down on duplication, really tried to focus on what is accreditation supposed to be getting at. The new president, CEO of the ACCJC, who actually lives locally, he lives in Century City, and he will be coming to visit with my executive team on September 27th, and he's making the rounds at colleges around the state. And really excited to have him here. I think these changes to accreditation are going to be great for everyone, so it's exciting. On this coming Friday, I will be going to Sacramento because I am leading a partnership resource team similar to the team that came here and helped us last year. I'm leading that for Laney College and looking forward to that. And I do want to suggest that we close our meeting in memory of Mary Presley, who worked in the Learning Assistance Center, and she passed away a couple of weeks ago. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Announcements by shared governance representatives and Board of Trustees. So let's begin with Audrey Joseph.
Hi, good evening. The Classified Senate held its annual retreat last month at the Foothill campus. We're able to engage, learn from one another, and strategize some of our goals for the year. One of these goals being to increase our visibility as a Senate and continue to engage the classified community in shared governance. Part of this effort will also include increasing communication and the sharing of information as it relates to classified professionals campus-wide in the various roles that they serve. And this concludes my report.
Thank you. And Ms. Diane Miller. Dion. My eyesight is not good. I'm sorry. I need to be at that side of the room to see straight. Thank you. Dion.
My name is Dion Miller. I'm the new president of the Management Association. So on behalf of the Management Association, we'd like to recognize and congratulate our new managers that were voted in today by the board. We have Carlos Tito Altamirano, who's the new director of EOP&S. Cecily Lewis is Basic Needs. Richard Caldwell is the lead custodian, and Jackie Johnson is the athletic director. The MAA also voted and approved our new vice president on the board, and that's going to be Matt Camara, and he will be starting next week. The Management Association has also voted and approved to have executive members who are not part of the executive team to join the Management Association, and so we will be sending out invites to them for us to join us. I would also like to thank all the managers who volunteered in the What Huts last week across campus to answer questions for students and help them navigate their way around campus, since most of them haven't been here at all. I wanted to give a special shout out to Rebecca Cobb and Miriam Altanui for their organization, help, and support of the What Huts. Also want to once again give a huge high five to all the managers who helped support Thirsty Thursday, as their help and support made the event a big success. We would also like to acknowledge two managers who have or already have retired, and that would be Hedva Weingart and Tony Barbone. And we want to congratulate them both on their careers. Well done, and let them know that we're happy for them. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Dr. Gina Lopez with Academic Senate.
Good evening. Although the Academic Senate won't meet until next week, I wanted to officially welcome the new and returning trustees on behalf of the PCC faculty. It is our goal to continue our efforts towards liberatory education. We will also be working with the district to help PCC become a trauma-informed campus with liberation at its core. We welcome the trustees to read the works of Drs. Gina Garcia and Barbara Love in regards to liberatory education and join with us as we work to better serve our students and to truly make this campus an anti-racist institution. The faculty are happy to be back in the classroom with our students. I'm teaching as well. It's amazing to have their energy. It's amazing to engage with them, and we're happy to do so because it's our passion. That's it. End of the report.
Thank you so much. Now with the trustees report, let's begin with student trustee Gomez.
Thank you. I'm going to do the Associated Students report first. So, thank you all for the support during Welcome Week and, being on campus. It's really nice to be able to see so many students engage with us. Also to help students by providing some meals during Welcome Week. I think it was a success, despite the heat and I guess the lack of volunteers. But we were able to make it happen. We provided over 450 meals to students. From pizza, burritos, chicken bowls, and vegan options as well. We ran out of food for sure, and it's interesting to see how much food creates community,
Yes.
but in general attracts people. Some of the pros and cons of Welcome Week for us was being able to engage with students. Promoting our social media platform, which is the Instagram being advertised. We were able to get close to 400 new followers. I think it may have been easy to persuade them with the food. Some of the cons, as I mentioned, not having the best weather throughout Welcome Week, and also not being able to engage more with the students and get some of their feedback and experiences because we were busy with the food distribution. Today we appointed 3 student recommendations to the roles of ASPCC Vice Presidents for Student Services, Campus Activities, and Business Affairs. And we are pending an appointment for the Vice President of Sustainability. And also waiting for the special election to conclude. We're expecting to have, of course, if they're voted by students by September 30th, we should have a full board then and be able to, better cater to students. And also want to remind y'all that September 30th, we will have another movie night. It'll be Stand and Deliver, presented by Academic Affairs, I guess in celebration for Latino, Latinx students on campus, but also Hispanic Heritage Month. Next week, we will be having ASPCC Club Rush on the 13th and 14th, Tuesday and Wednesday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Also, want to thank facilities for supporting us during Welcome Week, from getting us ice, from helping us with the setup, but also helping us clean up. That's something we are very grateful for. And for my student trustee report, I was able to attend the CCLC student trustee workshop in San Francisco, mid-August. And I appreciate the experience. A lot of the information I was already aware of, so it served as a refresher for me. I enjoyed being able to meet so many student trustees and just getting to share our objectives in this capacity, but also some of the things that are already in place. So being able to network following those workshops was very helpful. I was a bit homesick, though. I'm not used to being away from home multiple days. Kind of miss my cat. And I also would like to share something that we are attempting to replicate. Thank you for answering so many questions related to institutional funds with HERV. And I think something that would be great for us to push for is what Fullerton College has done with Sodexo. Now that we have new food dining service, which is Sodexo as well here, they have a $12 daily food voucher for Sodexo dining, and it's paid through the HER funds, the institutional funds, and that's active until the end of fall semester. I think students in general face food insecurity. Some of the students during Welcome Week informed us that they were starving, and they were also hesitant about approaching the tables with food because they thought they had to pay for that. So it was a relief for them to know we were providing that through our budget. Hopefully, next month we will have a new student trustee sitting here, and I'll still be present. So I just want to let you all know that I appreciate everyone listening and engaging. Some of you being able to join our associated students meetings and introducing yourselves and encouraging students to reach out with any ideas that the board can possibly assist with in improving their experience here. So with that, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Wine.
Thank you. Well, I want to first echo the welcome back for folks for the fall semester. It was really exciting to see the activity in the hub on campus, and so I'm hoping that the semester is off to a good start. I want to also thank Dr. Olivo and all the folks that help support our students here in the Student Service kind of mini tour last month. It was really great to really experience firsthand and meet a lot of folks I haven't had an opportunity to meet yet that really do the work to make sure that our students are supported. So I really appreciated that. And I also wanted to thank ASPCC for having me last month. It was great meeting some of the new board members, and I know there are new ones, and looking forward to meeting whoever the new student trustee is going to be, even though I'm going to be sad I'm not sitting next to you, even this is the one day I am sitting next to you. But it was really powerful to hear directly from students and kind of some of the work that they're planning on doing, not just this term, but moving forward. I've had a great opportunity this past month to have a conversation with a local school district in my area, Arcadia Unified, with our superintendent about how we can continue to build deeper relationships, and there was some keen interest in doing that. Of course, we already have a great relationship, but really think about ways we continue to support students to make sure they come to PCC. And I also just wanted to give thanks to Ms. Jones, and I don't know if Jesse is still here, but there you are, thank you. For my first budget subcommittee meeting, it was incredibly helpful with the information that was provided and the detailed walkthrough, so I really did appreciate that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Kwong.
Yeah. I had a wonderful meeting with Salvatrice Cuomo last week, and got a really great introduction orientation to the wonderful work that she does over at the Economic Workforce Development and the work that she's going to help me out with back in Area 5 in helping establish CTE pathways for some of the students there and hoping to increase enrollment for PCC. Wonderful tour by Dr. Olivo of our student programs, so much so that I didn't finish because I talked too much. And so I asked her if I could come back, and she was gracious enough to allow me to return. And so I will be seeing other aspects of the student services program, so thank you.
Terrific. Trustee Silver?
Yes, I notice in the staff that's leaving us, one of them is Nayari Zagrabian. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I will miss him so much. When I began, we were online, and his technical assistance in every area to me was so kind, patient, and excellent. And since then, I have the odd experience of getting those phishing emails, and I seem to be online maybe a little too much in my life, but I zing them over to Nairi, and I ask legit or phishing, and every single one of them has been phishing. And I don't know if you know, Nairi does so much to protect our college from bad actors. He immediately goes in, he writes a script to pull those emails out of everybody's inboxes so you never see them. And he does other things that protect our campus, as you hear of other institutions that have had ransomware attacks. So far, we have not. So he will be very missed. I wish him well in wherever his future takes him. And speaking of student wonderful things, and Dr. Olivo, I know we have our Homeboy 5K coming up, and I know I will be participating, and she was just wondering if any of the other trustees will be participating. You can walk, lope, or run through the 5K and really support an excellent, outstanding organization. So are there any other trustees or anybody here that's going to be participating? Christine?
What date is it again?
You can walk, run, or row, right?
Yeah, I said lope, L-O-P, lope, yeah. Any form. Christine Kwong will be.
Yeah.
Tammy, what date is that?
It's Saturday, September 24th, 8 a.m. down at Homegirl Cafe. Okay.
And we have a team of 100, so we're excited. We'll have a
Fine.
great PCC showing.
We will make ourselves known.
We have another volunteer.
Great.
Great.
What's your name?
Thank you. Trustee Gibson?
Yes, I really enjoyed my experience at a What Hut and meeting students, helping to direct them. It was a great experience, even though it was extremely hot. I also was very proud to attend the Latino Heritage Parade and Festival kickoff that just happened. Mayor Gordo was there, and Portantino, and many community activists. So it was great to hear the efforts they're putting forth and the hope to get the community involved. And I hope a lot of people from the PCC will be involved on October 1st for the Latino Heritage Parade and Festival. There's a lot of things happening. Thanks. That's my report.
Thank you. Trustee Martin?
No report.
Trustee Arsterling?
No report.
I would like to take this opportunity and congratulate the La Cañadas Unified School District for completing the renovation of its elementary school, Palm Crest Elementary School. It was through the $149 million bond that the school district passed several years ago, and finally they had a ribbon cutting, and now they have new renovated elementary school in La Cañada. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers who came up and provided comments. Certainly, this is a forum for all the community members, constituents, stakeholders to come and share their comments and their feedback with the board. And I certainly appreciated all the comments that we received today. I also like to thank my colleagues for spirited conversations and discussions on these agenda items and motions. And this is a real opportunity as a board for us to discuss publicly our opinions and our thoughts on the issues of PCC. So whether we agree or disagree, I think it's great that the public can see and hear our public discourse and how we make our decision making, and to have that with transparency and accountability. So I appreciate my colleagues and certainly the staff, as well as President Angejanis, in what we all do to further the mission of PCC. So thank you. And with that, we have proposed future business meeting dates. No, okay. Proposed future agenda items. None? Okay. Now to our favorite part of the meeting, adjourn. And I'd like to adjourn the meeting in the memory of Mary Presley. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.